Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. On this channel, I talk all about radical self-respect concepts. I interview experts on narcissism and other current event topics, and I also touch on a little bit of dating sometimes as well. I also have these live streams where you can also talk to me. But today, I'm going to talk about if you're a guy and you think your girlfriend or even wife is a narcissist, maybe a borderline, first make sure it is not this. And don't get me wrong, I am someone that totally understands there absolutely are female narcissists and borderlines out there. Absolutely a thing. Not trying to invalidate anyone's experience that they do have a relationship with a narcissist that's a woman. That absolutely happens. I'm not saying it doesn't. The only thing I'm saying in this video is first make sure it's not this. And again, if it truly is a narcissistic woman, you can do what I'm about to say in this video, and it's not going to matter because their pathology is worse than what I'm talking about. You can't do what I'm about to say and have it overcome narcissistic pathology. That's just not how it works. But that being said, there's a lot of women out there, and I hear this all of the time in my coaching consultations. I hear this from men's perspective, and I hear this from women's perspective. And what is it that I'm hearing? What I hear is a lot of the times the woman doesn't feel loved and she doesn't feel safe. And then when she doesn't feel loved and doesn't feel safe, her behavior is going to change a lot of times. She might be a little more irritable. She might get a little more defensive. She might withdraw a little bit. She might stop wanting to sleep with you more. And not every woman knows exactly why they're starting to feel this way with the man. Now, some men may complain, well, every woman should know and they should be direct in their communication and tell me exactly what's going on with them. And if you know anything about dating and relationships, that is usually not how it goes. And even women, you can tell me all you want that, oh, I don't do that. It's like, well, if we take a look at your relationships, it probably does happen. But it's a normal thing for women to want to feel loved and to want to feel safe. I'm not saying that's not a normal thing at all. But often what will happen is then the woman will come to the man. She'll be a little bit irritable. She'll try to bring something up to him. Maybe she'll say, you're not making me a priority. And then so often what happens is the man makes it worse. How does he make it worse? Well, he gets defensive and he starts barking right back at her and being a little more combative and maybe raising his voice and getting irritable and sucked into the woman's emotional energy. This is absolutely the wrong thing to do because you got to understand what's happening in the situation. But the problem for so many men is they're not able to even provide what I'm about to say. And what I'm about to say is positive masculine containment. What is positive masculine containment? That's when a man takes care of the woman in his life and tries to make sure she has a safe place to be herself, to grow, and to feel emotionally safe, to know that she's taken care of. Her needs are taken care of. And what really helps is when the man anticipates her needs. That's what masculine containment is all about. Now, a childish and immature man would say, oh, I shouldn't have to anticipate anyone's needs. I'm not a mind reader. But that's just not how the feminine works. And granted, now that I said the word, there's a lot of people in this day and age, they hate the words masculine. They hate the words feminine. But they're realities. They're masculine energies and feminine energies. Polarity is a part of the dating world. What do you think tops and bottoms are in the gay and lesbian world, if not masculine energies and feminine energies? So you have to get over that. I have really no tolerance for people that get really upset when they hear those words. I'm like, come on, like, grow up, get over it, because they're a thing. And so what happens is the man, they really need to step up and think, okay, the woman doesn't feel loved. She doesn't feel safe. What should I do? And this is what they need to do, but they have to learn how to do it. The other aspect of positive masculine containment is the man can't hurt the woman without also hurting himself. And this is where someone like Teal Swan would call it positive ownership. And there's a lot of negative connotations around the word ownership, that's for sure. But in this context, it's not a negative thing. And a lot of women, they might say, I don't need positive masculine containment. But then when you look at their lives, they have all of the negative effects of not being positively masculine contained. And there's many versions of it, right? A family. The woman's father can provide positive masculine containment. The community can provide positive masculine containment. Her employer can provide some positive masculine containment. Anything. It can be anything. But in this day and age, I just don't think there's a lot of men who truly understand the concept. And what will happen is maybe they'll get a little on the defensive. They'll get on their back foot and they'll wish that women can be something that they're just not. And that's just not how it works. So they bang their heads up against the wall, hoping that the woman's going to be just like a man. And that's just not how it works. I mean, men and women are different. And that's another thing. If that's a problem for you too, that's another thing you gotta get over, because men and women are just different. Hello there, Ellie. How are you? We're doing something a little bit different today because it's about dating and the relationships. And it's something that it's going to connect with narcissism in general as well. But so when the woman's a little bit irritable, the man has to think to himself, what is it that makes the woman I'm with feel loved? What is it that makes her feel safe? So often what also happens is the man maybe will pay for bills or pay the mortgage, do things, but that doesn't necessarily make the woman feel loved. There's like not every woman's going to think acts of service is going to make her feel loved and safe. It's not always the same thing. But guys who don't understand this, they'll do these acts of service and then they'll be flabbergasted when the woman still doesn't feel loved and safe. And again, they don't even identify the problem as that anyway. They just think the woman, it's like, oh, this woman's crazy. She's a narcissist. She's a borderline. And it's like, okay, sometimes. I'm not saying that's not the case sometimes. It absolutely can be. I'm not saying it isn't. But they skip this part first and they don't understand it. And some people will even say they try. And it's like, well, if this is your romantic partner and presumably there were some good times in the beginning, what were those times like? When did she feel loved and safe in those cases? And think about that. And hey, and even if you need to be direct about it, just taking the time to show that you care about her needs, that you care about her emotions. And what I would say as a man, if I'm in a relationship, I would think of it as, if she's upset, I'm not responsible for her feelings, but I definitely want to contribute to trying to make them better. Both of those things can be true at the same time. Like, I can't change how she feels completely, but I can certainly influence it, I think. And I don't think that's a negative thing in this context. And there is nothing more powerful that when a woman comes to the man she's with and she's a little upset, she's irritable because she's not feeling loved, she's not feeling safe. And the man has such a strong masculine presence that he can make her smile and change her mood, because now he provided for her what that woman wants. She wanted to feel loved. She wanted to feel safe. And he is like the oak tree, the strong presence that's there. The feminine crashes up against the walls and he's just there, strong and present. And he can, if he's strong in himself, this is a thing that can happen. And unfortunately, what I see a lot happen these days is the man's just not able to. Like, he doesn't know about the concept of positive masculine containment. So that when the woman brings her emotions to him, and she doesn't necessarily always even know why she's doing this, but she will, but she'll bring her emotions to him and he doesn't know how to handle it. And he gets overwhelmed by her emotions and they engulf him. And then he's on his back foot. He's backpedaling. He's defensive. Maybe he blame shifts. Maybe he acts like, well, I do all these things for you. And when you're doing all that, you're jading, justifying, arguing, defending, explaining, all of the wrong thing. You have to take a big step back and ask yourself, what does she really want right now? What's really going on in the situation? Is it about whatever she's acting like the problem is? Because often there will be symbols. Maybe she'll complain about things not being done around the house. That's absolutely a thing. But is it really about things not being done around the house? Or is it really a symptom of not feeling loved and not feeling safe? And when a man isn't competent in his own life, and the woman senses that he's failing or he's not competent or as competent as he could be, that's another thing that can make women feel unsafe sometimes. This is absolutely a thing. So the guys that have it together in their lives and they can have a space that is safe, they know who they are, they understand their emotions, they can be assertive, but they can also be understanding and comforting. That's what women want. But so often with men, they do one or the other. They're either all comfort and nurture, or they're the opposite. And it's just like they're all adventurous and assertive, think like muscular dude or something like that. Balance is harder to come by these days. And then, of course, there's also toxic dudes as well, of course. But how does this circle into narcissism? Well, what a lot of narcissistic men do is they mimic positive masculine containment. And they do this with their controlling behaviors. And so to a lot of women, and this is a side note to the women that had a narcissistic parent that conditioned them to associate the behaviors of a narcissist with love, or maybe it's like the attachment style that's a little bit off, because let's face it, if you have a narcissistic parent, it's going to be much more difficult to have a secure attachment style. It just is. So what happens is the narcissistic guy is controlling, and it mimics the effect of providing positive masculine containment, but it's not positive masculine containment. But it does make some women think they're cared about when a narcissistic guy is controlling. And you'll notice this because when a woman breaks up with a narcissistic guy and she's with a guy that's a little more laid back, and he might be too much of a nice guy, for example, and she notices that she just doesn't feel it with him. And she thinks, does this guy really care? He's not being controlling. He's not like upset with me. Like, does he even care? Like, they expect the emotional roller coaster. They expect the volatility. But what happens to the guys that are the opposite of the narcissistic guys is they are so laid back and carefree that can also make the woman feel unsafe, because there needs to be an element of stepping up. A lot of these guys are also passive. Passivity does not make a woman feel loved or safe. And so this is another issue that happens. So narcissistic guys, they do the controlling side. And then the guys that you see, they don't really do well with dating, often not confident, too passive, not assertive enough, and they don't know how to step up and take charge and lead. And that is also what masculine containment is. A guy that can step up, take charge, lead the situation, know where he's going, and has a plan. This is what women are dying to have. They're dying for a guy to do these things. Often they don't know how to articulate it, but that is what it is. They want a guy that knows what he wants, knows where he's going, has a masculine presence that she feels safe with and feels loved by. It sounds so simple, but you see it crumble every which way. But what you do notice is the guys that are still dating and in relationships, they err more towards the narcissistic side sometimes, where even if it's not healthy, it is still at least getting them in the door. They'll have more of those traits that are masculine, assertive, confident, dominance. Now, you could say they're faking it, and to an extent they are. But it's better I shouldn't say better, but those guys will do better in relationships and at least be more successful in dating than the guys that are the opposite. And if you're a woman listening to this, I mean, this side of it might not make sense to you, but as a guy, I see it. Like I see the guys that are successful in dating and I see the guys that are not. And I think a lot of women don't really think much about the guys that are not successful in dating. It's just not really on their radar. So it doesn't register. So when I talk about narcissistic guys being successful in dating, they're just like, ugh, like, how could you even say that? But it's like, well, I see what's happening. I see who's getting dates. I see who always seems to have a partner. And it's often guys that are like that. And the guys that are the opposite of that, too passive, not confident enough, not assertive enough, they're invisible. And if you talk about the problems of those guys, it can fall on deaf ears to women. But to men in that spot, they need what I'm talking about right now. And what the narcissistic guys would need is actually what more of probably the understanding, compassionate guys have more of is self-awareness, some emotional intelligence, the ability to take a step back and not be reactive. Like that's what those guys need. And the versions of masculinity that I like, that's what it is. It's a guy that can be emotionally in control. He has emotional self-control. He's not going to snap off at the when the first thing doesn't go his way. He'll be able to respond rather than react. He can feel his emotions and own them. He's going to know what emotions are appropriate in each situation. A lot of this comes down to social calibration as well. And again, the guys who are not good with relationships, they're not very good at social calibration. And hey, even there's narcissistic guys that are not good with social calibration either. They can be assertive, they can appear to be masculine, but then when it comes to social calibration, they can fall off the deep end. But again, they can be good in the beginnings a lot of times, but then as the relationship goes on, they kind of crumble. I've seen this all of the time. But the reason I'm even bringing this up is because there are people that might think, oh, my girlfriend must be a narcissist, must be a borderline. And yeah, it's possible that she is. It's possible. But first, make sure it's just that it's not that she doesn't feel safe and that she doesn't feel loved. Try that first. And again, this is a learning curve too, because if you're not used to doing this as a man, if you're not used to providing positive masculine containment, it's going to be a struggle. Like you're not going to be able to do it instantly. Like this is why they said men must become. It takes time. It takes time to really develop yourself and be the kind of man that women will feel safe with, that women will feel loved by. It just is what it is. It's part of the burden of being a man, in my opinion. But rather than complaining about that burden, which a lot of people do, they do complain about it and they whine about it. And that's the opposite of being masculine, in my opinion. That's the opposite of providing positive masculine containment. Like no one likes a complainer. Nobody likes a whiner. Now, don't get that confused with invalidation. Like there are guys that absolutely have problems and things are tough. Absolutely true. But you can validate that and say, you know what? The guys who do the best, they're going to step up and own it. They're going to be the ones that find a way. They find a solution. They're going to have perseverance. They're going to be resilient and they're going to keep on trying. And I think an important thing for men too is to have other male friends that they can talk to about some of this stuff, because I am an advocate of other men will be able to understand male problems better than most women. And I do think men would often be best served by getting a male therapist. I think that too. And again, if it was a woman that had issues with other female things, I think they would be better served by getting a woman therapist a lot of times. Not always, but often. Now, with the dating piece, it can kind of overlap because I talk about narcissism, of course, sometimes dating. So I can have a lot of insights for the women that come to me. But I provide the same kinds of insights to men too. But this is just something that I've been noticing in my calls where if I don't think it's always narcissism and I'm thinking, all right, this person's telling me about how this woman's acting, and it doesn't necessarily seem like it's narcissism from what I'm hearing. It just more seems like she doesn't feel safe and she doesn't feel loved. So what then? But a man has to have this mindset down first to even be successful at this. Because if he has the wrong mindset about it, and it's like, oh, I can't read her mind, she should be more like a man, or she should be this, then you're not going to get anywhere. But I think a lot of this takes understanding the masculine and understanding the feminine, understanding what they can be and can't be for you. And when I say masculine and feminine, I'm not saying that men are 100% masculine and women are 100% feminine. That is not what that means. Each person, man and woman, is a percentage of both. So maybe you would say a much more masculine man might be like 90-10 or 85-15 masculine to feminine. But then there's also feminine guys that would be maybe, I don't know, like 30% masculine, 70% feminine. That happens too. And I'm not judging any of this, by the way. I'm just giving you the realities of it. And then the same applies to women. There can be women that are maybe 85% feminine, 15% masculine. And then there can be some that are more 50-50. And there are symptoms of the women who are more masculine, especially when they wouldn't want to be. What are the symptoms of that? So a symptom of that would be if she's with a man and she doesn't feel loved, she doesn't feel safe, and she doesn't think the guy is handling things. So now she starts to feel unsafe, and she thinks, if I don't step up here, these things are not going to happen. And maybe the man is using weaponized incompetence. That can absolutely be a thing too. But this is when the woman has to be more in her masculine because the man she's with is letting her down. Or maybe it's a woman who's by herself. Maybe she's a single mother. There is no man in her life, so she has to play both of the roles. She's the man and the woman in that case. And I think a lot of women would prefer to be able to relax into their feminine, but they have to feel safe enough to do that. If they don't feel safe, they are not going to. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. A woman shouldn't do that unless they feel safe, right? But again, I want to start talking more about this because to me, this is the missing gap. It's the gap between, all right, here's the narcissistic guys. Here are the guys that are more passive and they lack confidence and don't really get any dates. And me talking about this would help women too. I think it's going to help everybody, honestly. So Ellie, let's see what you say here. When it is a match, each one brings out the masculine or the feminine in one another. Yeah, I could see that for sure. And again, I don't want to paint those terms in a negative light one way or the other. It's like, if there's a guy who's more feminine, yeah, that is what it is. Like, I think I probably have a good mixture of both, I would say. Like, I might be personally, I might be a 70-30, maybe 70% masculine, 30 feminine, 75-25. I'm not like a 98% masculine, 2% feminine kind of person. But I think what's important is people own it, whatever they are. Owning it is attractive, period. So, and again, there's also going to be women that are the masculine in their relationships, and the man is the more feminine side. That happens all the time too. When does that happen? It happens when you see the woman wearing the pants. That's what that is. And again, no judgment with this. Everyone has to do what makes them happy. I don't care what makes people happy, as long as it makes them happy, right? I'm just also saying what I see so many women say they want or complain that they want. And sometimes they don't articulate it properly, but I can sense what it really is. So much of it boils down to this. They don't feel safe. They don't feel loved. And if you start with that and act and say, okay, what can I do to make her feel loved? And you might have to be more direct about it at first and say, you know what? Like, what is her love language? What makes her feel loved? Is it touch? Is it time? Is it words of affirmation? Is it service? Is it going on adventures together? What is it? Figure out what that is. That is so important. And some people don't even take the time, some men don't take the time to try to figure it out. And so they never know. And they'll keep on doing this one act of love that isn't even an emotional deposit into the woman's bank account. So that's another concept I like. There's emotional deposits and there's emotional withdrawals. An emotional deposit is something that makes the woman feel loved and safe. And men can receive emotional deposits as well. An emotional withdrawal is something that makes them feel unloved, unsafe. Maybe it's when he's insulting or belittling or puts her down or is passive aggressive or gives her a silent treatment. All of those are emotional withdrawals. And if you go, using the bank account analogy here, if you kind of go into the bankruptcy zone, now your relationship is in the danger zone. Like, you're done. You've been overdrawn, so many emotional withdrawals without any emotional deposits, and then you're in a miserable relationship. This is how it goes. Charlie, what's shaking? And Phil Bradley, not late nor early, just on time. So, and these are the things that happen. So a man, what he could do is try to figure out, what does she want? Does she want more date nights? Does she want just more of my undivided attention? And that's another one too for a man. Giving your undivided attention, even if it's only for an hour or two a day, to me is better than very distracted attention. And I think most women would agree with that too, because the distracted attention, that doesn't make them feel loved either. But like, you do your work, you're on your mission and purpose. And to me, being on your mission and purpose is a big part of being in your masculine for sure. But you do that. And then when you're available, you go all out and you own your emotions and you try to like really show your love to the woman in your life. But again, like, even as I say this, there's a lot of men that just aren't really ready for it. They don't have this kind of thinking, or they'll tell you why it won't work. And they're just communicating. They're not ready for it. They're not ready for this. And some of it's understandable, because who's teaching them? Nobody. There's not too many healthy examples of this. And this is why I do like Teal Swan. She does talk about this. Now, you can tell me all you want about how she might be behind closed doors, or if she's cluster B. I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't necessarily like how she acts in some of those documentaries and things. But in terms of her concepts that she talks about, I think they're super important. And there's a lot of people out there, like even in a red pill world, they're just not being taught about positive masculine containment. They just don't talk about it there. They talk about other aspects, but this one particular concept, it doesn't get talked about. And to me, it's one of the most important concepts to talk about. Like, they'll talk about your money, your fitness, how to be more attractive, all those things, like getting your foot in the door. But the positive masculine containment part, that's how you sustain a healthy relationship. Without it, you're not going to get too far. And you would think with something as important as this is, there would be more people talking about it, but there's not. So I would love to actually talk to Teal Swan. I would love to talk to her on this channel, because I did just see she brought a masculine course that she's doing. I haven't done it, but I saw she has one. And I think we could have an interesting conversation. Now, I know some of the people that follow me don't like her. I totally get it. And what I would say to that is, separate the message from the messenger. I'm not endorsing her like the person. I don't know how she is in her relationships. She might be different. I don't know. But in terms of the concepts that she's talking about, in terms of what she's teaching, I like a lot of what she teaches. Thank you, Faith. I appreciate it. The Skipper. Good. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, Jolly, I'd be curious, especially as someone on the spectrum like me, I'd be curious what you think of her. Because I do like a lot of her information. Like I said, some of the things I've seen her do, like in terms of how she runs her groups, kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But She has videos about positive masculine containment. She has videos about what men really want. She has videos about what women really want. And a lot of those, I think they're super valuable. And I think a lot of people could benefit from them. But you'll notice there's a lot of people, they want to dismiss what she says. And some people will say, oh, she's too close to a red pill world. So they just try to dismiss everything like that. Or some people will say, oh, she's delusional. She calls herself an alien. And that's something, as the wizard of radical self respect, pay attention to this. Be very mindful of when someone tries to use one phrase to dismiss everything someone says. Because when that happens, they're not addressing the arguments. Like, I'd rather see people address the subject matter instead of trying to just dismiss everything they say and hand wave it away. They'll say, oh, Teal Swan's too much like a red pill. But meanwhile, they don't actually mention anything she talks about. So it's like, and that happens in politics all the time too. Someone will say, oh, this person said this, so they're just completely ridiculous. Ignore everything they say. And that's an unwise thing to do. There's something to learn from everyone. That's how I see it. And sometimes what you learn is what you don't want to be. But there's always something to learn from people. I'm telling you. And I'm somebody, I listen to everybody. I listen to everybody because, like I said, I can have a little bit of a debate bro in me. But you also got to understand, you can't defeat someone's arguments unless you know their arguments. You can't defeat what you don't understand. And that's where I think a lot of people crumble too. They don't understand the points they're even fighting against. So what happens is people just talk past one another. But if you understand the other side's point of view, now you can actually have a good debate / discussion on the subject matter. But it takes understanding. And what happens is a lot of people, they can't even tolerate listening to somebody they don't agree with. It just becomes so unpalatable for them. And you'll hear them say things like, I can't even listen to this. I have to turn it off. It's just making me too upset. It's like, why is it making you too upset? Is it because it's challenging what you think and feel? Is it challenging what you believe and you just don't like that? It's probably something to examine if that's what you're doing. So it's called Teal Swan, Jolly. Teal. And perhaps, you know what though, Jolly? We could probably break down some of her stuff here. Actually, you know what? If you guys are up for it, we can do that right now. Now that I mention it. But I think this is a missing puzzle piece. It's a missing puzzle piece that I think men would benefit from and women would benefit from. And it's not like a light switch either. It takes time to cultivate this within ourselves. But as a man, I think it's pretty important. So let's look it up here. All right. I got to find it though, so bear with me. But how are you all today? Faith, Jolly, Ellie? Where's George? Where they give him a demerit. But George, George got a few points because he was doing some good timestamps on some of my live streams. So I'll give him credit for that. Plus 5 for that. You're full of turkey from Thanksgiving? How was your Thanksgiving? Let's see here. Here we go. Let's see. You ready? You all ready for it? It was good. I was with a friend of mine and saw her family and her families from all over the world. What do you mean, Ellie? Why are you in your head? Is it because of the holidays or something else? I have heard of him, Faith. Have you heard of Patrick Teahan? If so, do you have opinion on his channel? He talks a lot about toxic narc family recovery. I agree with a lot of what he says. I haven't been seeing him pop up as much on my Instagram. I'm living the dream, Ellie. I've been feeling pretty good lately, and I can't complain. There's only a couple. Like, there's only the only thing I think I disagreed with Patrick Teahan on was he was really emphasizing something I didn't like emphasizing how awful like toxic parents were, and I forget exactly how he was doing it. And again, I think I know why he was doing it because validating is so important, especially in the beginning. Oh, this is what it was. He was saying how no, they didn't try their best. No, they did. They definitely didn't. And I thought to myself when I heard that, sometimes, sometimes they didn't try their best. Other times they just didn't know what they didn't know. And the reason I didn't like it, I guess, is because in stage 3 of healing, part of what I strive to do, and this is how I do it. I'm not saying you have to do it this way, but if you want to emulate what I'm doing, this is what I do. I try to let go of resentment. And one of the ways I let go of resentment towards my toxic parents were understanding and putting myself in their shoes. And again, this is not something you do in stage 1. This is not something you do while you're still in an awful situation. It's the exact opposite thing that you should be doing. But down the line, when you're gone, I put myself like in my dad's shoes. And I was like, wow, if I was like 35 years old and had 4 kids and was working the night shift, well, chances are I'd probably be a freaking crankopotamus too. And I can be pretty irritable. And that doesn't excuse it. It doesn't excuse it, but it helps me to understand it. That's all I'm saying. And understanding it helped me to let go of resentment. And that's not an excuse. And there's other things going on too. CPTSD. He was kind of like a dry drunk too, even though he didn't drink. But seeing it that way helped me. Another thing that helped me was pulling the positives from the experience too. You know it, Ellie. You know it. So Real Deal Primer says, raised with morals and values, then end up isolated with a lady who uses violence as her best way to communicate, then learned there was other men before who didn't live through it. Well, yes, that doesn't sound too good then. That doesn't sound too good. Yeah, I mean, a woman who uses violence instead of communicating, not the best, right? Certainly not the best. All right. But let's show you all what Teal Swan has to say.
Would benefit by under.
It's the real deal. At the end of the day, no excuse for abuse. I agree with that, Ellie. I agree. What I said, you can believe, and you can believe there's no excuse for abuse. Like what I'm saying, I'm trying to think how to articulate it properly. It's only once you're aware of what you did go through, understanding it was abuse, it was belittling, you're always guilty of something. You have to understand first what it was before you move through the other steps. Does that make sense? Because I'm not telling people to skip the understanding step of recognizing, yes, it was abuse. Yes, it was belittling. Yes, it was fill in the blank with whatever else it was. I'm not telling people to skip that. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But that's why the letting go of resentment part is really a stage 3 of healing concept. It's not until you've done the first 2 steps do you get to stage 3. But let's see what Teal Swan has to say about positive masculine containment. And which screen do you prefer? This one or this one? Me bigger or her bigger? Let me know in the chat. My experience took me to a journey of education. You can't go wrong with education. Real deal. Can't go wrong with it at all. Me bigger? Okay. That's what we'll do then, Jolly. So let's listen to Teal.
So often when I'm speaking about relationships between men and women, or doing any kind of help with couples, so often I talk about how important it is for a man to provide containment for the woman that he's with. But so many men and also women are confused about what containment even is, much less how to provide containment for someone. For that reason, I've decided to do this episode entirely on containment. Before I get into this video, I have to actually say that this video comes with a big warning. This video is going to run up against so many erroneous yet deeply cherished beliefs around sex equality. It's also going to run up against so many erroneous yet deeply revealed beliefs around power and freedom relative to women. What this means is that I'm going to have to ask you to keep a really, really open mind and also separate out your own personal triggers from this objectively intellectual conversation about containment and about the sexes. Another thing, this episode is about something that men do for women in relationship. It's not about what women do for men in a relationship, so don't expect me to go into that during this video. As a last disclaimer, because this episode is going to be controversial, most likely, I gotta mention something. You can play your relationships literally any way you want to if it's something that works for you. The thing is, you got to be really, really honest with yourself and ask yourself the question, is what I'm doing in my relationships really working for me or not? And when I ask this question to so many men and women, the answer to that is no. And for women, so many of them answer no to this question because the man in their life is not actually providing them with containment. All right.
Very good disclaimers by Teal. I disagree with nothing so far. And spoiler alert, I don't think there's anything in this video I disagree with, if I remember it correctly. But let's see.
And let's get into it, shall we? The first thing that must be said when I get into this topic is that men and women are different. This automatically means that men and women are not the same. In fact, if they were the same, on a physical level, the way you'd see that manifest is by a being having the exact same physical structure. Until the day that we are willing to accept that men and women are different, we will never be able to actually create harmony in a relationship between men and women. This is critical because so many of the people who fight so hard for gender equality erroneously do so by fighting for gender sameness. In other words, they try to establish equality of value or equality of power or equality of whatever else by trying to prove that men and women are the same. Sorry to break it to you, but this is a super losing argument and it's a losing strategy because they're not the same. Bottom line, and I'm going to start with this, containment is something that women need in a relationship in order to feel good in the relationship.
Imagine that. Containment is something that women need to feel in order to feel good in the relationship. Remember that. Then think narcissistic guys being controlling can mimic this. It can mimic what women need to feel good in a relationship.
If you want to understand this even more in depth, you can watch 2 of my videos titled, first, What Every Man Needs to Know About Women, and second, Why Women Like Assholes. The bottom line is, and I never want you to forget this, women cannot feel good in a relationship without containment. Before we go deeper into exactly what containment is and how to provide it for a woman, I'm going to have to address the demographics of women whose behavior or whose words suggest that they don't actually need containment. A big group of women who act like they don't need containment or as much containment are in fact getting that containment from somewhere else other than the primary man they're in a relationship with, and usually that's their family of origin still. Another group of women simply seem like they don't need it because they seem so capable of fending for themselves. In fact, they simply had to accommodate for, acclimatize to, and compensate for the lack of containment in their life. Contrary to the first group of women who act like they're okay without containment from a man because they're getting it actually from their family of origin or some other place, this group of women don't act okay. They tend to seem feral, displeased, controlling, anxious, and uptight. Now let's talk about the group of women who outright resist containment. With these women, when you look at their childhood upbringing or young adulthood, what you see is trauma relative to what they associate with containment. It's really not containment. but they have trauma relative to lack of freedom, feeling limited, feeling controlled, and things like this.
Did that sound familiar out there? I mean, I could even relate to that because if you have trauma from narcissistic parents that are controlling, you'll probably relate to what she just said there, and you'll resist some of this stuff. And this is also what you'll see sometimes if a woman recognizes she's been with a lot of narcissistic guys, she'll have that same trauma now. Even if she didn't have a narcissistic parent, now she'll have it though. She'll have it if she's been with several narcissistic guys. She might develop CPTSD, she might develop narcissistic fleas, and she'll become resistant to this and she'll harden. And granted, it's an understandable part of the process, but when your heart is too hardened, no one can come in. It's the kind of woman that builds walls that are impenetrable so they just never get hurt. It's an understandable thing, but you also cut yourself off to all the positives of love at that point as well. You cut off the negatives of being hurt, but then you also cut off the positives of being truly loved and loving.
Oh, another thing is that a lot of the women in this demographic feel like anytime they're getting containment from a man, it's some sort of a weird message about them being weaker or less than. Guess what? These women and their behavior also don't seem fine, because even though they will tell you and even act like they don't want containment, they still don't act okay. In other words, they exhibit all of those negative behavioral characteristics that are associated with having a lack of containment. To conceptualize of masculine containment, I want you to imagine that in a relationship, a man represents a clamshell and the woman represents that pearl inside of the clamshell. This is a healthy representation about the relationship between divine masculine and divine feminine. This masculine clamshell is creating a safe, nourishing space in which the female can exist or occur. It enables a woman to be soft, open, receptive, and to grow. If you imagine removing that masculine shell, the female immediately contracts, goes rigid and into a state of defense. In other words, it's a coping mechanism instead of a natural state in and of itself. And whenever there is that lack of masculine container, the female actually has to cope by becoming masculine herself. Now,
doesn't that sound exactly what I was talking about before? And this is exactly what absolutely happens, right? They'll become hardened and then they'll develop more of their own masculine qualities out of necessity. And sometimes the necessity is what I would consider the narcissistic male lion routine, when the guy kind of leeches off a strong, successful woman, then the woman has to develop that even more.
When she does this has a negative impact not just on her mind, on her emotions, but also on her physical body. Essentially, this causes a flip in polarity. And that flip in polarity is not only unhealthy for her, it's to blame for so many of the relationship issues that are happening between men and women today. With that image in mind now, let's look deeper at containment. To contain a woman in this context is to actively, not passively, create a safe space of well-being for her.
That was the most important part there. Actively, not passively, create a safe space of well-being for her. So if you're a man in a relationship, how do you do that for the woman you're with? It's like, do you even try to do that? And what things does the woman actually respond to? Because what's each woman's going to respond to, you boil it down to the common denominator, it'll be the same: feeling love, feeling safe, but different things will make each woman feel loved and safe. So it's not going to be synonymous across the board, but at the bottom of it, that is what they all want.
The healthy masculine energy creates a container in which the feminine can truly exist and thrive. To do this, a man must take positive ownership of a woman. Many people have a negative association with the concept of ownership, but this means that they threw the baby out with the bathwater, right? The reality is that women actually want to be owned. They just don't want to be limited, oppressed, controlled, or seen as less than. And the travesty is, as a society, we've taught women that this is what ownership actually is. When a woman is owned, it's essentially the opposite of the energy of her being astray. And women, to be completely honest with you, do not do well with being stray. So here's the thing about positive ownership. When you take something as a part of you to the degree that it belongs with you, it actually becomes a part of you to the degree where you can't actually hurt that thing without also hurting yourself too.
And that's what you hear me say a lot, right? When you truly have positive masculine containment, or when she says positive ownership. And I know there's a lot of negative connotations about that word ownership, but the way she's saying it, it's not the negative versions that you instantly think of. But what it really is, you can't hurt this other person without also hurting yourself. That's the positive version of this that nobody talks about anymore.
So positive ownership is really the only way to stay genuinely safe in a relationship, regardless of whether it's between a friend of the same gender or a woman and a man in a primary partnership. If you actually take positive ownership over something, the best interest of that thing is of your utmost concern. This makes a woman feel happy in a relationship. To understand more about this, you can watch my video titled Own People: How to Take Ownership of Your Relationships. Many men who don't understand what it would practically look like to provide containment for a woman would benefit by understanding that containment is essentially to fend for a woman. When a man does not do this, a woman essentially has to fend for herself. To fend for herself is to look after, protect, and provide for herself without help. When a man fails to provide containment for a woman, she ends up feeling like she has to do it all herself and fend for herself.
Sound familiar out there? Feeling like you have to do it all for yourself and fend for yourself? Does it sound like any narcissistic guys out there? Or does it sound like the guys that are way too passive that you just are no longer turned on by or attracted to? Chances are you do relate to this.
This means a male who lacks the skill of containment inevitably makes a woman feel like she's all alone. Not just all alone, also unsafe, starved of needs, and as if all the pressure is on her. This will make a woman become controlling, anxious, hard, cold, masculine, bitter, angry, and resentful. And again, it's going to cause her mental, emotional, and physical well-being to corrode. If you want to provide containment for a woman, I don't want you to let her or expect her, worse, to fend for herself. Instead, think about fending for her on a mental, emotional, and physical level. In any situation you get yourself in, think, how can I fend for her in this situation? Do you want to know a sad reality?
And that's a great question for men to ask themselves. How can I fend for her? Another word for that would be, how should I best care for and protect her in this situation? In all areas, physically, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. What would you do? What would that even look like? And this takes practice. It's not something that people that are not used to doing this are going to be able to do. It takes time. It takes time for a man to cultivate some of this and to become this version of himself that can provide these things.
And no, this isn't an argument you get to make that I'm objectifying women by making this comparison. Most men, many men, take better care of their car that they drive than the woman they are in a primary relationship with. A man who takes positive ownership and who therefore creates containment for his car acts in the best interest of that car. He doesn't let the car fend for itself. Some men rub their car with diapers to keep it clean and protect the paint job. They appreciate the hell out of their car emotionally. They put energy and effort into the upkeep of their car. They keep the oil tank full and rotate the tires and learn all about the engine and lock the car door so no one steals it. And guess what? Doing this actually makes them feel good.
And so that's a good analogy there. Many men take better care of their cars than they do the woman in their life. So they'll take care of every little aspect of it, clean it, make sure the engine's running properly, get the oil changed, rotate the tires, make sure there's air in the tires, all of that. But then when it comes to the woman in their life, whoop, not so much. They don't take as much interest in that. They don't try to do everything they can for the woman in their life because at the end of the day, people's priorities come to the surface. And for a lot of people, unfortunately, their things in their life, if they're a man, are more important to them. And how do you know? Because their actions communicate it loud and clear. Actions will always show people what someone's priorities are. No exceptions.
But what might providing containment for a woman where she feels genuinely positively owned and fended for look like on a physical level? I'm going to give you a list of examples, but know that there could be so many more. It could look like to energetically put your energy around her no matter where she is and you are in the world. To take responsibility for her well-being, which is the positive form of claiming her. to create safe, supportive conditions and a safe, supportive environment where she can grow and expand, rather than expecting her or encouraging her to grow and expand by virtue of her not having those safe and supportive conditions/environment. To do things that create a feeling of security on any and all levels for her. To provide for a woman in terms of resources. This could be financial or otherwise. To take it upon yourself to create improvement in her life without being asked to do so. To take charge of a situation by taking the lead. To be reachable and available to her. To be initiative relative to her. To be active relative to her well-being instead of passive. To protect and defend her physically. To protect her emotional well-being. To do things like open doors for her, or pick her up in your car, or pour water into her glass, or have her take your arm when walking down the street. To reassure her. To remember important dates and make those dates special. To attune to her mental, physical, and emotional state so that you know what is right to do or not do relative to her specifically. For this, you must put considerable energy into understanding not just women in general, but her specifically.
And that's exactly what I said before, being attuned to her individual needs, because not the same things are going to make her feel loved and safe. Different things will make each individual woman feel loved and safe. But for the ladies watching this, I bet you can see in your own lives where the men in your life before, they maybe did some of these things, or they didn't do some of those things, or maybe how some of the narcissistic guys would mimic some of these things in the beginning, only to have it unravel later, or maybe they did them even in the beginning, but then as time went on, they stopped doing them, which reminds me of Milan Kundera's The Unbearable Lightness of Being. And he says in that book that the first few months of a relationship, you're writing your contract together, your relationship contract. And whatever you do in those first few months, you better keep on doing them as time goes on, because if you don't, you'll be risked. They'll start calling you unloving. You risk being called unloving. And that's absolutely true, because what's happening? They did certain things in the beginning to get you, but then they don't follow through with those things and keep on doing them. That does demonstrate a lack of love. If you did it in the beginning, why did you do it in the beginning if you're not going to follow through with it? Why? Because this person, it's not new anymore. And for a narcissistic guy, a lot of times, it's not working as the source of supply like it used to in the beginning. So when that happens, then they'll do even worse than being passive. They'll go to the opposite of being downright devaluing. Now, the tricky part is, even that cycle of abuse, though, women can stay longer in that cycle of abuse than they often will with the guy that's too passive. And that's a very frustrating thing for a lot of passive guys to hear. But I hear it and I see it all of the time. Now, women would say, well, it's the trauma bond, right? But also, it's not just that. Some people get hooked on the emotional volatility. Some people get hooked on the emotional ups and downs because, yes, narcissists provide tons of downs. They can also provide some ups too. The passive person, that's a man, he doesn't provide either. No ups nor downs, just nothingness. And women really hate that.
To do things that take pressure off of her without her having to ask. To organize a date with all the details totally under your control. To take charge of logistics. To initiate repair if rupture occurs in the relationship. To put effort into meeting her needs, and wherever necessary, to help find ways for her needs to be met outside of you. To be physically with her, or to make sure she's okay when she is not with you.
And that was a big one too, making sure her needs are met even outside of you. What does that demonstrate? It demonstrates humility. It demonstrates a lack of envy. Envy being, of course, when you want something someone else has. Jealousy is when you're afraid to lose something you already have. So if you're, and I guess this could also be jealousy, right? Jealousy would be if you're afraid to lose the woman you're with. That is a jealous thing. But when you're okay with her becoming more successful in her life, with her hobbies, her friendships, etc., getting her needs met outside of you, that demonstrates real confidence. It demonstrates security. It demonstrates positive masculine containment. All good things.
In other words, to make sure she does not have to fend for herself when you are not around to fend for her. to not put her in lose-lose situations, to not put her in dangerous situations, to deliberately create regular time to be present with her and totally focused on her.
Regular time to be with her and attention exclusively on her. Undivided attention. That is a humongous one that, as time goes on in a lot of relationships, men don't do that. Men don't do that. And what happens? The woman doesn't feel safe, doesn't feel loved.
To appreciate her, to be communicative and speak your mind as well as to listen to her, to caretake the relationship itself, to be and to act committed to her, to do things that cause her pleasure, to make decisions, especially tough decisions, to take responsibility for your decisions and actions, to figure out what needs to get done and actively get those things done, to take responsibility and initiative for facing and resolving problems you might become aware of or things you might need to heal within yourself, to provide containment for any children you might have together and or she might have from another man, to be in your masculine energy and power, to help her face the parts of herself that are resistant to being contained rather than to simply stop giving her containment when she resists it. Now keep in mind, now that you have heard this very long yet definitely not complete list, that it's not a really good idea to think about all of these things and to just try to memorize them and do them. The best way to go about this is to just simply decide to take positive ownership and to provide containment for a woman. When a man does this naturally, because containment is actually natural for the masculine, all of these containment providing things naturally come as a result of making that decision. In other words, because it's actually second nature, the minute you make a decision to actually become a container for a woman, it's not like I need to tell you how to do it. In the past, there used to be a saying, "Over the mysteries of female life is drawn a veil best left undisturbed." Sorry to tell you, but that's complete BS. And if you want to provide actual containment for a female, you're going to have to throw that concept straight in the trash can. Because in order to actually provide accurate containment for women in general, you're going to have to understand as much as you possibly can about women in general. And in order to provide containment for a specific woman in your life, you're going to have to understand her to the best of your ability.
Amen to that. That is really important. And it's like I said, you have to understand each individual person you're with.
Going back to the car analogy, which is so helpful for many men. Providing containment for and taking positive ownership over a Ferrari is quite a different experience than taking positive ownership and therefore providing containment for a Ford Taurus. Women are very much the same in many ways, but they're also very different in many ways. So it's very important to put the effort into understanding women in general and the woman who you are with. To learn more about this, you can watch my video titled "Stop Trying to Love Them and Start Trying to Understand Them." So, women, now is the time for you to face and resolve the resistance that you have to actually being provided containment by a man. To the other side, men, now is the time for you to face and resolve your resistance to providing containment for a woman. As you do this, I need you to keep something seriously in mind. Containment has absolutely nothing to do with being controlled, being oppressed, being limited, or being looked down on. And in fact, if a man adds any of these things to your life, he's not actually providing containment for you.
And so that's a big one, because I know when people hear the words containment or ownership, they're automatically going to think of those negative things that she just said. And I bet you some of the people that are watching this, that's probably their first instinct too, to think, oh, controlling, smothering, all these other negative things. But that's not what it is supposed to be. And we just don't hear about this positive side of these things. When we hear like negative behaviors in men, we very seldom hear, you hear the nurturing good qualities of men, right? You hear about the softer side qualities of men that people want, but you don't necessarily hear as much about the assertive, active side of things. I think that side's not talked about as much. But there's a guy named Man Talks on YouTube. He made a Instagram post about Aragon and how he's one of the best versions of masculinity. So Aragon is from Lord of the Rings. He is the king. And for those who don't know, You should probably check it out. It's pretty cool. But I'm going to try to invite him on the show too. I think we could have a pretty good discussion about some of this stuff.
Quite the opposite, because those things are not actually in your best interest, and thus he's not in alignment with positive ownership. Now, a lot of you have been getting upset when I do relationship videos about men and women about how straight focused instead of homosexual focused I am. I'm going to throw you a bone today. Containment is still something that's needed in a homosexual relationship, but there tends to be a lot more of an issue in homosexual relationships relative to power dynamics. And this just means that the relationship to containment becomes a whole lot less straightforward. Usually, the partners do best when they communicate openly, honestly, and freely so as to mutually and consciously decide what containment they will provide for each other in the relationship and to what degree. There's often a higher degree of flip-flopping relative to who is containing whom and in what situations and why when you're in a homosexual relationship. And these decisions that define the how and when one person is containing the other is largely based off of what makes each party feel like they're in their personal power. And healing aside, in a homosexual relationship, that mutual process of defining containment within the relationship obviously has less to do with gender. But I'm going to say this in this episode, and maybe do a whole standalone video on this eventually. In a homosexual relationship, it is so incredibly important to clearly define what roles each person in the relationship are playing for each other. Because one of the shadows, which you can fall into with containment as well in a homosexual relationship, is falling into the shadow of no roles. Containment is not something that is only natural for a man to provide for the woman he's romantically in a relationship with. Containment is something that is natural for any man to provide any woman, regardless of whether she is a mother, a sister, a daughter, a friend, or anything in between. Guess what? It's also natural for men in general in society to provide containment for women in general within society. And ancient cultures, tribal cultures that are now, of course, basically destroyed, did a much better job at providing containment in this way. Containment used to be something that the men in general in society were responsible for teaching younger men. So containment was something that they expected from each other and held each other up to the standard of. And not only that, there was less pressure on every single man, because if they could guarantee that the men in general were going to provide containment for the woman, all the pressure wasn't on him. That pressure was actually diffused. What this means is that men, or young boys rather, let's start with young boys who are born into a society, used to be taught how to contain by virtue of themselves getting containment. And then
That's a good point there. The more men have received it from the men in their lives, the better able they are to learn it and then provide it for others when they're an adult. But when masculine containment is missing in the older generations, then they're not giving it to the younger generations, which makes it harder for them to give to the future generations.
once they came of age and they started to reach their adulthood or young adulthood, they would then be directly educated and even put through tests that actually proved that they could provide containment, or educated them into providing containment. So it wasn't like they were at a total loss once they hit their manhood.
Rites of passage is what she's talking about. And that's another big thing that is missing today for a lot of people. And in a way, in the greatest generation, as they call them, World War II was basically a rite of passage for that age group. They all had to do something extremely challenging. Many of them died, but that was a humongous thing for them that, granted, they wouldn't want to do it again, but it was something that an experience they'll never forget. They have camaraderie with the people they went there with. It's a big rite of passage. So what's the rite of passage for today? I mean, sometimes you can say it's sports, but what else would it be? You let me know.
These cultures, of course, simply didn't use the word containment. It is at this point that I'm going to have to give you a sad fact. The single-family home, and even more than that, the broken single-family home, is perhaps the most destructive structure that has ever been created within society. It is also to blame for why there is so much wounding relative to containment within society for both little boys and little girls, and therefore men and women. So many men who struggle with providing containment struggle with it because they never got containment as little boys. They did not get the opportunity to learn by example, and they were not directly taught about it by other men. So it is, in essence, a developmental trauma. And for this reason, because it's a developmental trauma, so many men really grow up stunted in this way. And instead, they start to turn towards women, primary relationships with women, in order to have the woman give them containment. Anytime.
And have you seen that out there where men want the woman to take care of them? I bet you some of you have seen that, right? And this is what you see when I say a narcissistic man turns his romantic partner into his mother. That's what's going on in that dynamic. That man wants the woman to give him containment instead of the other way around. If you can relate to being turned into a mother in a relationship with a narcissistic guy, you can relate to what she just said.
You've got this type of developmental trauma, you've got to essentially make up for what you lacked in your childhood life, in your adult life, and I know that's frustrating. But obviously, men who are in this position of not really ever getting containment themselves or being taught how to contain and then are sort of fumbling around in the dark to try to figure it out, they tend to subconsciously go for polarity flipped relationships. It's my hope that within society, and especially amongst men, there will be more awareness about this issue around lack of containment. And then there will be men who step up and provide containment for other men and who teach them how to contain women. So all this being said, you can definitely learn how to contain a woman. So all that I've said being said, I want to leave you with this. Providing containment in a relationship is not something that only makes a woman feel good in a relationship. It's also something that makes a man feel good in a relationship. When men are healthy, they love the feeling of providing containment for the women in their lives. In fact, it gives them tremendous purpose, value, and self-confidence to do so. Have a good week.
Oh, and I agree with her on that. So when a man does that, I think it's true. That does give him purpose and it does make him feel good. And it's what women want too. Jose, welcome. My ex said she hated acting like my mom, as did I. Does that make me the narcissist? Because I really don't think I am. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily the narcissist, but it does mean maybe you were being a little more passive in that relationship, if that's what it seemed like she wanted or felt like she needed to be. But again, I can't say for sure without knowing a lot more about your situation. Does he have a clean hand towel in the bathroom? Ellie. But so Ellie and Jolly and Jose and everyone else who is still here, what did you disagree with what she said? That's what I'll be curious about first. Because when I listened to that video, there's not much I disagree with in there. I don't think she has negative intentions. And I don't think, like, if people listen to her, it's going to hurt people's relationships. I think if anything, it's going to help everyone's relationships. So I don't see the problem with what she's saying. Now, some people would disagree with it, I'm sure, but I think it's great. Jose says, yeah, eventually I became emasculated and she controlled everything. See? I thought that's usually what it is. And again, I don't judge this. I have been the passive guy. I have been the guy that gets dumped because I wasn't confident enough or I was too needy or fill in the blank. And these are the issues that, like, women just instantly don't like these qualities in men, so they don't get very far with the ladies. When the women think of issues that they don't like in men, they think of the issues that the men they have already found attractive have. Big difference, right? All right, Ellie. Okay, good. So, like I said, I would love talking. I'm passionate about this subject. It's one of my favorite subjects to talk about. Before I talked about narcissism as much, this is what I talked about more, dating issues with men. And those are the people I used to help more. So what I've been thinking about doing is trying to combine these because I think it's ripe for combining. Because the narcissistic guys being controlling is the very same thing that mimics what would actually be good. So if I can teach the guys who are more passive to provide positive masculine containment, and you need to teach the narcissistic guys some accountability and some self-awareness. That's what they need. So they need different things, right? So depending on where a guy is, each one will need different things. So I guess what I would ask you, Jose, is this. How did the emasculation process happen? It usually happens slowly at first, and then it kind of builds. And then it's kind of like a reverse frog in a boiling pot. Like we talk about that with narcissistic relationships. With being emasculated, it happens slowly, little things at first. And then before you know it, the woman's got all the power. That's usually how that goes. Yeah, she does, Ellie. I use different language, but similar in ideas as her. I like her. I mean, she's actually very attractive to me in that video, but that was years ago now, I think. And like her and I think very similar. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how she is in her real life, but I know in terms of her content, I agree a lot with what she says. And to me, it's like she's an in-between world. Like she's not red pill, but she's also not radical feminist either. She's in the middle, which I think would help both sides because it's the balance. It's the balance that would help. Men listen to her would be helped. Women that listen to her, I think, would also be helped. So, and that's rare. That's rare. Because right now, what you see online is the rage baiters. Rage baiters kill it. So whether you're a red pill rage baiter, a MGTOW rage baiter, or a men ain't shit rage baiter, or men are all terrible, like that, those are the people that get the views out there, and people eat it up. I mean, me personally, I can't stand it. I got that stuff it just is repulsive to me. But that's what I see. Those are the people getting views. You know what it is, Ellie? I think she's a brunette with blue eyes. That's one of my favorite combinations. I think she has blue eyes. So that's something that's always gotten me. That's rare. It's a rare combo. It's almost like a brunette with green eyes. I like that myself. But like I said, I would like to invite her on the show here at a point. I'm not sure if I'm big enough yet for her to come on, but we'll see. In fact, there's this guy I know who runs Charisma on Command. I think his name is Charlie. He interviewed her. And this is also what I'm going to do moving forward now that I think of it. Whenever I interview a new guest, I think a good practice will be breaking down an interview of that guest on another channel. So, for example, Dr. Carey is coming on Monday. So what I could do is break down a Dr. Carey video tomorrow night and kind of go over it in preparation for Monday. And I think maybe it would give you all a little bit of an insight, maybe get you hyped up for the interview. You can come up with things you'd want me to talk to her about. And then I do the interview Monday. Thursday next week, Josh Connolly. We can break down an interview of Josh. Josh, he was interviewed by Mark Vicente. So that's someone that we can break that down. So let me know if you think that's a good idea, if you think you would like that. Or would you rather have it be your first impression of them as talking to me? Let me know. Ellie says people have to go to people that has language that resonates. I agree with that. But Ellie and Jolly, what do you think? Do you think I should break down interviews of the people before I have them on? Or when I have them on should be the first time that you see them? I think I do a little bit of both. You can break down some just to get people a little bit interested in the person. Yeah. Okay. Good. I can dig it. I was thinking about that today for some reason. I said, yeah, I'm doing all these breakdowns. I'm thinking, why don't I start breaking down the people I'm going to talk to? Because they're all on channels as well. One of the next Dr. K videos I'm going to break down, he's talking about borderline. And I'll tell you what, that Dr. K, man, he's something else. I don't know. He cited some, I'm not going to spoil it because I'm going to go over it in this video, but he says something in this video that a little misleading what he's saying because he misses out. He doesn't mention an important part of the study. And I'm like, dude, like, why are you going to leave this important aspect out here? What are you doing? I'm glad to hear that, Jolly. Yeah, we do a Dr. Carey breakdown. I think I like Dr. Carey. I think her and I will get along. There's certain people out there that yours truly would not get along with. Yours truly, I rub some people the wrong way, which is understandable. Right? Some people rub me the wrong way. But I think, for example, I rubbed the game Exposed the wrong way, for those of you who might know her. And I rubbed her the wrong way because of how I talked about autism. Which is funny because I'm the one with autism, not her. Her children have it, right? So she said. But she didn't like the fact that I had said, oh, it doesn't matter if you have rejection sensitivity dysphoria or pathological demand avoidance, toxic behaviors. It's not an excuse. I mean, I totally get that. Recorded yesterday, Phil Bradley. But I totally get, like, if I act toxically, I don't expect some sort of get out of jail free card because I'm on the spectrum. It's like, no, I know that wasn't a good behavior. I recognize it. It might be understandable in some cases, but it doesn't mean it's okay. But the part of me that would say, no, you need to give them a pass. It was rejection sensitivity dysphoria. It was pathological demand avoidance. It's not the same. It's like, dude, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Toxic is toxic, regardless of the label. That's what I always say. I always say toxic is toxic, regardless of the label. But some people really don't like that. Some people really need the distinction. They'll say, nope, if a narcissist does it, it's toxic. If someone with ADHD or autism does it, no, not toxic anymore. Like, what? Like, what? Like, and if you're the person that thinks, oh, it's not toxic because I'm autistic, like, what does that really mean? What does that really mean when you say that? And then how are you any different than what a narcissistic person would be anyway, if that's what you're saying? Like, oh, it's okay. It's okay for me to continue acting toxically because I'm not a narcissist? Like, I'll take things narcissists say for 1,000, Alex. That's what I would say. So it's just a different thing. Each person has to contain their own world. I would agree with that. So I guess that's like my belief with it is just different. It's just different. And I'm just more okay with owning it and accountability. And how did I learn that? AA and NA back in the day is really where I learned that. It was, they make you admit, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict. And there's benefit in that. Because a lot of narcissistic people, they never admit to something like that ever. It's their first step of taking accountability in some way. So it's helpful, but I learned how to do it. And I learned how to acknowledge, like, when I'm wrong, learn to acknowledge when I mess up. It's really such an important thing. Jolly says, I have had a mother of an autistic child tell me how people with autism are. She had the nerve to tell me I wasn't autistic because I was not exactly like her child. That is very obnoxious, Jolly. There are a lot of people that they just don't understand that more than one thing can be true at the same time, and that not all autistic people are exactly the same. They're just not. There's different kinds of autistic people, different levels of severity, and it's like it shouldn't be that hard to understand, but for some people it is. For some people they just don't get it. And they'll say, my daughter or son wasn't like this, so you mustn't be autistic. I mean, people have said that to me in some of my videos. My one video about like 5 signs that you had undiagnosed autism, people were telling me, "Oh, you're not autistic." And it's like, oh, what the fuck do you know about me? You know me from this one stupid video. And you're going to tell me already what I'm not when I'm the person that's lived with me? Hey, glad you caught the live here, Racy. Racy Renee, they call her. Ellie says, we can make our worlds be, but must grow up first. Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, I should start advertising these lives more, I think, in the short sections and the posts. And sometimes I post these to Instagram. So Old Bear, like I see Old Bear all the time on Instagram, but I have not seen her much over here. I'm going to have to give her a demerit. And I had to defend Old Bear in my comment section the other day. There was a person that it was weird what they did, but they were accusing Old Bear of being combative when that was not what was happening at all. And this person said something along the lines of, only someone with a personality disorder or who is naive would stay with a narcissist for a long time. And Old Bear said correctly, I don't agree with that. And I was like, correct. Old Bear is correct. And then this guy said, or woman said, whomever it was, they said to her, oh, Old Bear, you're being so combative and immature. And it's like, no, they're just calling out what you said because it was a pretty big generalization. Haven't you ever heard of the frog in a boiling pot analogy of abuse, where the frog is in the water? The temperature's not hot, so the frog doesn't jump out. So if you throw a frog in a boiling pot of water, it jumps out. But if you slowly turn up the heat, it'll cook to death. And that's exactly what happens in abusive relationships. They don't realize the heat is being turned up. And then before they know it, they're in a terrible situation. So that's why it's not true to say only people that have a personality disorder or who are naive end up in relationships with a narcissist. Not true. But what is also true is sometimes there are people that are emotionally dependent, or maybe there's people that have borderline or other kinds of attachment issues. That is also true. Also true, but more than one thing can be true at the same time. Jen, what's shaking? How was your Thanksgiving? Racy Renee and Jolly and Jen. 25 years. I remember you telling me about that, Jen. It's a long time. It's a long time. But what I try to remember is we all learn about this stuff when we're supposed to. And of course, the earlier we learn it, the easier it is to believe that, right? I mean, I didn't learn about it until my 30s, but for some people, they would say that's amazing that you learned about it in your 30s. I didn't learn about it until I was in my 50s, 60s, 70s. But I hear people learning about it in their late teens to 20s now. And I'm like, holy mackerel, like you guys got a 20-year head start on me. So good grief. But it's all relative. I mean, people learn about it now because of social media. That's really why it's happening. I'm glad you had a great Thanksgiving. Racy Renee, how was your Thanksgiving? Oh, that's what I was going to do. Yeah, and so Racy, Renee, and Jen, I'll be curious what you think of Teal Swan's thoughts on positive masculine containment. Me too, Jen. Me too. Always better to learn than to not have learned ever, without a doubt. Without a doubt. But all right. So what I'm going to do, I got to look up a good interview to break down of Dr. Carey. in preparation for Monday. Well, Monday I'm speaking with her, so it's going to be tomorrow or Sunday. I do the breakdown, probably tomorrow, but we'll see. She's out there, in my opinion, but I don't really know that much about her. Why do you think that? Out there in a good way or not so good way? I feel like everyone's got spiritual vibrations these days. Well, that can be good or bad, right? There can be spiritually narcissistic vibes, and then there's genuine vibes. I mean, ultimately, genuine vibes are the most important thing to pick up on. You want genuine. What kind of coffee mugs, containers, does he have? Ah, kind of a toxic way. From Dr. Carrie McAvoy? Interesting. Because, truth be told, I don't know that much about Dr. Carrie. I don't see that much of her. I haven't really watched her interviews yet, but we'll see. Well, it sounds like you had a great Thanksgiving there, Racy Renee. Sometimes it's not the volume of people, it's not the amount of people, it's the quality of people, right? That's what it's all about. And all of the holidays in general, it's all about who you spend it with. That's really what makes it. If you're in good company with people you feel emotionally safe with, that's what it's all about. Okay, good. So, I guess. Oh, you were referring to Teal Swan. Oh, I see. Okay, I misunderstood you. So you were talking about Teal Swan. I thought you were talking about Dr. Carey. But no, that makes sense. All right, everybody. I'm going to do a 10-4 here in a minute. Yes. Dr. Carey with a K. Kerry. So it's. Yeah, that I can understand that more with Teal. I can understand that more with her. Not Dr. Carey. I guess I haven't picked up on those vibes from Dr. Carey. And I'm pretty good at that. I'm pretty good at picking up on the vibes. I've got a good vibe detector. Which reminds me, someone was telling me that Sadia Khan has good vibes. And I told them, your vibe detector is broken if you think Sadia Khan has good vibes. You got it, Jolly. But all right, Ellie, Jolly, Jen, Racy Renee, Jose, come on back in the chat sometime, Jose. Happy to have you. It's good to have some men in here too. And next door strangers, is that a man or a woman? I don't know. We'll have to see. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow. Never late. Never late, Phil Bradley. Wizards like Phil Bradley's. Never late nor early. We arrive right when we're supposed to. The end. Over and out.